Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this year's Knowledge Mobilization Impact Awards. So my name is Jennifer Rhodes. I'm Program Manager of Knowledge Mobilization Initiatives here at the ASU Graduate College. On behalf of the Graduate College, I would like to express appreciation for each of you joining us today to celebrate knowledge mobilization efforts of our graduate students and postdoctoral scholars. I would first like to invite the Dean of the ASU Graduate College, Dr. Alfredo Alteres, to say a few words.
Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome, everyone. We're excited to celebrate today the second edition of the Knowledge Mobilization Awards. We honor this afternoon graduate students and postdoctoral fellows who are engaged in knowledge mobilization work. The Graduate College launched a Knowledge Mobilization Initiative last year in response to significant shifts in the production of knowledge that have been unfolding for several years now around the world. For instance, there is a growing trend and need for researchers to produce knowledge about problems that matter, with the attendant requirement to generate research that makes a difference. Indeed, today's expectation is not only to possess knowledge, but also to use it with a demonstrable impact. At a time when debates about the notion and roles of evidence are taking place in scientific and public spheres, knowledge used for impact is indeed a major imperative for universities. In turn, these trends have created conditions for a paradigm shift in the preparation of researchers and scholars. The traditional ivory tower model of higher education, in which scholars are solely concerned with producing knowledge to advance our understanding of the subject through a single disciplinary lens, is no longer viable. As Karl Popper remarked in the early 1960s, we're not students of some subject matter, but students of problems. And problems may cut right across the borders of any subject matter or discipline. Indeed, the demand for user-oriented research has increased significantly. Knowledge mobilization as a useful tool to engage productively with these trends and demands. It compels researchers to be mindful of knowledge user communities so that their knowledge is accessible, used, and impactful to solve real-life problems. For this purpose, the Graduate College is offering professional and career development opportunities to graduate students and postdoctoral fellows through courses like the KM Studio and PFX. We're also creating incentives to recognize and disseminate knowledge mobilization efforts with these awards. And we're getting ready to launch Traveling Knowledge Stories. What differentiates our knowledge mobilization initiative is its interdisciplinary culture and commitment to innovation. We animate participants to cross disciplinary and paradigmatic borders, even beyond the academy, since universities lost their monopoly a long time ago as the exclusive site of knowledge production. We're also encouraging to become comfortable communicating with audiences that do not share standpoints or jargon, to take risks when representing their knowledge, and leverage serendipity in their knowledge mobilization efforts. Before I conclude, I would like to show a short video to introduce the idea of knowledge mobilization and bring the concept to life with two stories from postdoctoral fellows working at ASU. One of whom is here. Peter was here earlier today. There you are. The ASU Graduate College continually improves the resources we provide to our graduate students and postdoctoral fellows so that they have the knowledge, dispositions, and skills required to succeed in the 21st century. The ASU Graduate College strives to equip graduate students and postdoctoral fellows with transferable skills that are needed in today's career markets. We are concerned with the so what question about researchers' labor and the knowledge they produce. Why would or should people outside the academy think that research findings matter? What difference is research making in people's lives or in reducing problems or challenges of social significance? Knowledge mobilization is concerned with making the insights and solutions discovered by researchers accessible and usable. How can we document that such knowledge made an impact on the lives of these people? The stories you're about to see illustrate what knowledge mobilization looks like in real life.
The problem that we try to tackle with our work is how can we improve fishing sustainability and also improve or at least maintain the livelihoods of fishermen. Small-scale fisheries are poorly regulated. They incur a lot of what is called bycatch, and bycatch is any animal that gets caught in a fishing net that wasn't intended to be captured. And in Baja, where I work, a lot of the bycatch includes endangered species such as sea turtles, sharks, whales. What really inspired this work for me was when I was a master's student at the University of Florida. I was studying sea turtle biology, and I was tracking the movements of sea turtles. You have to look into the eyes of a sea turtle. There's something so spiritual about it. This is an animal that's been around for 200 million years. Over the course of a 2-week span, I ended up tracking countless turtles to their deaths. And these turtles were ending up drowning in fishing nets. One day a fisherman came and brought me a turtle that we had been tracking. And I know he could have sold that and gotten a lot of money for that, but instead wanted to bring it to me. And so I looked at that as an opportunity to engage fishermen and bring them into my research project and make them essentially become part of our team and help us design different solutions that can protect turtles, but also that can improve their livelihoods. And so one day we were out catching sea turtles and tracking sea turtles, middle of the day, and I saw a sea turtle swim right up to a net, noticed the net, and turned right around. And so that led to my idea to place lights on fishing nets. The LEDs illuminate the net at night, and so it provides a visual cue for the sea turtle to see that net and then avoid becoming entangled in the net. Simply by putting these lights on fishing nets, we caught 50% fewer sea turtles and 95% fewer sharks. What I found though from my PhD research was the batteries only lasted 1 to 2 weeks. And so for the average fisherman, that would have been 200 to 400 AA batteries potentially per week. So what I did was I teamed up with ASU engineers who specialized in solar power and kinetic energy, and I basically asked them, how can we develop a solution to power these lights with renewable energy? That has really helped me mobilize my knowledge, because if I was at a smaller school or a school that didn't advocate for interdisciplinary research like ASU, it would be much harder to do this work. This is the future of fisheries. In 50 years from now, I can imagine every coastal community on this planet fishing with solar-powered nets.
Given my background in kinesiology, I learned a lot about exercise and exercise physiology and the importance of being active in order to maintain health and reduce your risk for diabetes. Energy in equals energy out. And so you look at a problem like obesity and diabetes and just think, man, why can't they exercise more and eat less? This would solve the problem. The problem that we address with our research is diabetes risk in Latino youth and families. Not a whole lot of work has been done around diabetes prevention for the family, specifically for Latino families. Latino youth are disproportionately burdened by diabetes. They are the most insulin-resistant subgroup. Early in 2012, we had actually started partnering with the YMCA to test this intervention. It was a diabetes prevention intervention for Latino adolescents. This was a rigorous clinical trial, and so a very controlled environment, but we did find that the program did lead to significant improvements in diabetes risk. Our work is really important in that we take our diabetes prevention programs and we adapt it to the culture. Out of our 160 participants, over 50% of them were coming from Maryvale. As soon as you step into Maryvale, you feel the culture. It's still a close-knit, connected community where the Hispanic Latino culture is prevalent, and one of the critical values for that culture is family. And so we really saw this need to take this program sort of out of the confines of this rigor and this clinical trial and move it to the community where it's needed. So Viva Maryvale is a family-centered diabetes prevention program for Latino families in Maryvale, Arizona. And it is conducted in partnership with some wonderful community folks here in the Valley, starting with the Valley of the Sun YMCA, who really lends their expertise in fitness instruction, and they serve as the site for the project. Patients are identified and enrolled into the program. They participate in a pre-intervention assessment, which is led by our team here at ASU, and then they enter this 12-week lifestyle intervention, where they go to nutrition education class for one time a week for 60 minutes, and the parents must attend. And there they learn things about fats and carbs, and they set family goals. And then 3 times a week, they go to a physical activity session, which is led by trained physical activity instructors at the YMCA. And then once the 12-week program is done, we send them back to the medical provider so that they can see their results, talk about their progress through the program, and establish a future plan of care. I think our knowledge exchange with our participants is bidirectional. That feedback is critical for guiding the development of the intervention. We've seen significant reductions in diabetes risk in our adults. For our youth, we've also seen significant reductions in their body composition. And then as a whole, we've seen this improvement in quality of life. We know that there are other vulnerable communities like Maryville, and we know that the need for diabetes prevention is also statewide. So our vision is that we can reach these communities in other areas throughout the state. To me, knowledge mobilization means taking the knowledge and the research that is generated here in the academic institution, taking it out to the community. For us, the power in our knowledge mobilization is through partnership. And so partnering with the other organizations and community stakeholders who can help us get this knowledge to the folks, get it from the research to the ground and to the folks who are going to use it.
Thank you again for joining us, and Jennifer will take us through the program next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean Artiles. So before we get started at the formal part of the program here, I just want to make a couple of announcements. At the conclusion of our program, you will be given the opportunity to network, enjoy refreshments, take pictures, and continue the KM dialogues that are so important. At the back of the room, you will also notice there are some tables set up to showcase our KM Studio students and their projects. KM Studio is currently offered in the spring semesters, and this past spring has been the second round of the course. Please remember to complete the feedback survey so that we can improve our KM Impact Awards programming in the future. We will also be having a drawing tomorrow for our lovely Graduate College mug, which we have on display here. So we do ask that when you fill out the survey, if you would like to be eligible for the drawing, please make sure that you include your email address so that we can hold the drawing and contact you. So without further delay, I would like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Professor Andrew Maynard. Dr. Maynard is director of the ASU Risk Innovation Lab, a professor in the School for the Future of Innovation and Society, and a well-known science communicator. His work focuses on responsible and beneficial technological innovation and spans artificial intelligence and autonomous vehicles to nanotechnology and gene editing. He is a member of the World Economic Forum Global Future Councils, has participated on numerous National Academies of Sciences committees, and has testified before congressional committees on a number of occasions. Dr. Maynard is currently working on a book with a working title, The Moviegoer's Guide to the Future. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Andrew Maynard.
Thank you so much. Just give me a second to open my notes. So it's wonderful to be here, talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, though I must confess for most of my career, I have not used the term knowledge mobilization. I have just apparently been doing it. You'll notice in the program that the title of this talk is perhaps appropriately titled, given the problems with the video, Humility is a 4-letter word. Unfortunately, there was a word missing from that title, which changes everything. So what I actually want to talk about is humility is not a 4-letter word. And I want to actually start by recounting a meeting that I was at last summer at the National Academy of Sciences. So this was a meeting on planetary protection, and it was a meeting where I was part of the small committee that consisted of some of the greatest minds from around the world trying to understand how we can prevent ourselves from contaminating other planets by sending out biological material and completely destroying the possibility of discovering life beyond Earth, or the even worse possibility of bringing back contamination and destroying life on Earth because we bring back some bug. I was not there as an expert. I was just there as somebody who they thought would be entertaining. But at this meeting, we had a presentation from the lead scientist in the Mars 2020 mission. So this is one of the next missions to Mars where they're going to be collecting samples from the surface of Mars in order to bring them back to Earth one day. And this scientist stood up and he basically lay into the committee. And he basically said, you are putting all these barriers in place that are preventing us from doing our job. So if you know anything about planetary protection, there are many, many, many hoops to jump through if you want to do certain things on certain planets in order to prevent you contaminating those planets. And he looked at this committee and he said, trust me, I'm a scientist. I know what I'm doing. I do my job well. And you just need to back off and let me do it. And he didn't quite use those words, but that was the impression. And what really struck me was this is a guy that had knowledge, and yet he was doing a really bad job of mobilizing it because all he got was antagonism back as these world experts looked at him, and you could see in their eyes them thinking, who on earth do you think you are? The problem was the hubris at that meeting poisoned any chance of effective mobilization of knowledge in that room. It poisoned the ability to communicate. And this is why I'm particularly interested in this idea of humility when it comes to translating what you know, what's in your head, to other people so that they can actually add value to that knowledge and use it. Here I must confess that I did actually have a little bit of sympathy with this lead scientist. So I'm a physicist, and I spent many years as a physicist working in labs. And any of you who are physicists or who know physicists know that humility is not something that's in our vocabulary. We just know we're right. And we get quite upset when people don't realize this. So I actually had to go through something of a voyage of discovery, going from my physics background, my lab research, to a point where I actually understood better how you begin to connect with different groups and different constituencies when it comes to translating knowledge and information and helping other people add value to that. A large part of that came over a 5-year period when I was the chief science advisor to a project in a think tank in Washington, D.C., and there was an early experience there that completely changed my perception. One of the first things we did with this project, it was a project looking at developing appropriate approaches to ensuring the safety of engineered nanomaterials and nanotechnologies. And one of the things we decided would be great to do is to create a public inventory of all the things you can buy that contain engineered nanomaterials. So we had this online database, and we wanted to publicize it. So at the launch, we decided, why not go over to London, UK, because if there's an excuse to leave America, why not do it? But seriously, we were working with a group in the UK called the Science Media Centre that brings together experts and journalists to dive into complex issues. And I was at a meeting with all of these journalists, and next to me was the CEO of a British company that had done a fantastic job in developing engineered nanomaterials and putting them into sunscreens in a very responsible way. It was a great example of one of the responsible products in our inventory. So we had this press conference, and afterwards I was talking to this journalist, a very engaged, very intelligent young woman. We were talking about what we were doing, and we had a fairly relaxed, casual conversation. And then the day after, I saw the article she wrote. So the woman's name was Fiona McRae, which will mean nothing to you, but has stuck with me forever. And what I didn't realize when I was talking to her was that she was from a little-known news outlet called the Daily Mail in the UK. One of our actually more notorious tabloid newspapers that doesn't really care too much about facts and reality, at least so I thought. What was worse was I'd used a very unfortunate phrase when I was talking to her. And as a result, the gist of the headlines that came out were, leading scientist accuses manufacturers of using consumers as guinea pigs. What was worse was apparently the worst offender here was the company whose CEO was sitting at my side at this meeting. I was mortified, and I was mortified because this article had completely twisted what I was trying to say. But on reflection, I actually realized the problem here was not the reporter, it was not the Daily Mail, it was myself, because I'd been stupid enough, I'd been arrogant enough to think that I could say whatever I liked and knowledge would flow and everybody would get the right idea. How wrong I could be. And in fact, looking back on that, the piece was actually well written. It's just that I'd given that particular journalist fodder for writing something that wasn't exactly what I wanted her to say. So through that experience and through many other experiences, I began to realize that one of the secrets of really effective communication and engagement, and what we now call knowledge mobilization, but then I thought of in terms of how you take knowledge out of somebody's head and give it to somebody else in a way that they can use, is this idea of humility. And understanding that it's not about you, but it's about your audience and how you actually work effectively with that audience. So within that context, what I thought would be interesting to do is to actually cast my mind back and see whether I could actually pull out some of the specific things around this idea of humility and mobilization and communication that might be helpful. And I realize there is a really weird sort of vibe here where I'm talking about humility, and yet I'm going to stand up here telling you about humility in a very humble way. But I'm going to try this anyway. So I have this written down so I don't actually forget any of these points. Just give me a second. So this was the list of 10 things that I came up with that I, looking back, had realized I'd actually learned going from being a lab scientist to somebody who spends more time than I ever thought I would engaging with other people. So the first one actually may be slightly surprising, but it's don't become a victim of excess humility. And I say that because I come across so many academics, scientists as well as non-scientists, who are convinced that they have nothing of importance to say to others and nothing that they know that can be relevant to other people. And what I've realized over time is even if you think you don't have that much to say, you actually have things in your head, you have things that you know, things that you can see that other people can't, and that if only other people had access to them, no matter how small they are, they could actually transform what somebody else does and the decisions they make. So don't fall victim to an excess of humility. Secondly, an obvious one, respect your audience. Remember that when you're trying to translate information, it's all about who you're trying to translate it to. And that brings me to my third point, which is always put your audience first. There is a temptation, certainly within the academy, to think that communication is all about you. You, the person standing on the stage, you, the person pontificating. The reality is, and any good teacher knows this, it's not about you at all, it's about the person you're actually communicating with. That also leads to the fourth point which I came up with, which is always be prepared to learn from others and to listen to others. I learned from many mistakes early on as I moved into the communication and policy world that I didn't know half as much as I thought I did. And the more that I actually learned from others, the better I would become. And sometimes that meant learning from others that I didn't think I should be listening to, including advocacy groups and NGOs and people who I fundamentally disagreed with, people who didn't have a physics degree, surprisingly enough. And I realized actually the world was a much bigger place and a more complex place than I ever imagined it could be. A really important lesson. Lesson number 5 actually uses a word that I really dislike, but sometimes it is very useful. And that is, in knowledge mobilization and communication, do not mansplain. Now, I have to say, and I don't like it because it has certain connotations, but it is such a useful word. But I must say that working with academics, I think mansplaining transcends gender boundaries. And it tends to be an affliction of people who think they know an awful lot that other people should know. And this temptation to jump in and try and explain the world to other people who probably don't need it explaining to them. And part of being humble in communication is recognizing when you're doing that and stopping it. Number 6, another fairly familiar one. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Sometimes we put it on ourselves to try and have the perfect mechanism, the perfect vehicle for translating knowledge from ourselves to others. It is really hard to get there, and the chances are we're going to fail doing that anyway. It's better to be 60 or 70% of the way there rather than make a mess because we wait until we're absolutely perfect when we probably won't be. And it's okay to fail because knowledge communication, knowledge mobilization is about the other person or the other community, the other group, not you. It actually doesn't matter so much if you make a bit of a fool of yourself or don't get it right, as long as the important stuff gets across. And that leads to number 7, which is learn from your mistakes, because in knowledge mobilization, you will make mistakes, an awful lot of mistakes. And that's absolutely fine, as long as you learn from them and you learn to fail forward and fail fast and get better at what you're doing. Number 8 is something that I've actually had to learn the hard way, and that is to remember that people don't have to listen to you and they don't have to pay attention to you. So any good public communicator, anybody that's on social media or who writes books or is involved with other forms of outlets realizes that when you put something out there, nobody has to listen. Nobody has to click on your video. Nobody has to read your article. And just because you are the greatest person on the planet in your area doesn't mean other people are going to pay any attention. You've got to get out of the mindset of thinking that because you're such a godlike person, people have to listen to you. And you've got to start thinking, how do you actually engage people where they're at so they want to listen to you? 2 more remaining. Number 9. Another obvious one. Engage with others using language that makes sense to the people that you're engaging with. This obviously means be careful with jargon. And I wouldn't actually go as far as to say don't use jargon. Jargon has its purpose. Shorthand in language is very, very powerful. But use it in a way that makes sense when you're communicating. Whatever you do, don't communicate in a language that doesn't make sense to the other person. It's nonsense if you do that. We know that with actual languages from different parts of the world, but somehow we forget about it with our academic languages. And it's oh so easy to fall into that trap of thinking that if we use long, complex words and phrases that go together but actually don't make sense to anybody else, it establishes us as an expert. Actually, it makes you look a bit of a fool, so don't do it. And that leads to the final point, and one that actually leads into today. Be generous in your support of others. Communicating what you know, engaging with others, mobilizing knowledge is really difficult, and sometimes it can be incredibly lonely. And one of the most important things I've found is if you're trying to do this, it makes a massive difference if somebody is supporting you and encouraging you. If you see somebody else trying to translate their knowledge into something of value to someone else, help them out, encourage them, support them, give them the affirmation that they need. That is probably the most important thing here. And it's all about not being hubristic in what you do, but having the humility to support somebody else. And this is why I think that this particular event is so exciting, because what we're able to do here is celebrate and support others in their journey to mobilize their knowledge effectively. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Maynard, for your inspiring words and excellent tips on maintaining humility as you move forward. It is now time for the awards portion of our program. Before we get down to the 3 different categories and reveal the awardees for each one, we would like to take this opportunity to recognize our reviewers. When your name is called, if you could please stand up, we can recognize you. Dr. Kevin Burns. Some folks might not have been able to quite step in, but this time of year, Dr. Lori Chasen. Jimmy Choi, I know Jimmy's here. Dr. Stephanie Etheridge-Woodson. Dr. Gustavo Fishman. Dr. Shay Lamar. Dr. Stephanie McBride Schreiner. Yay. Dr. Lori Mook. Jill Moore. Dr. Mary O'Reilly. Christine Roger. And Dr. Alexia Shantov. Again, we know this is a very busy time of year for a lot of folks, so we understand. Also, just to tell you a little bit about the review process so that you understand what the reviewers were working with. So the reviewers were rating application packets using a standard rubric. Applicants submitted a packet of information, basically that included the application, a copy of the CV and the resume, and evidence of the KM product. This year's application pool, I keep using the word astronomical. Last year, we are actually up 5 times the number of applications from last year. So a round of applause for all of you that participated in that. It was also an extremely competitive pool. Very, very difficult to draw the decisions this year. The submissions came from a wide range of disciplines, including, but not limited to, engineering, social work, education, sustainability, and the School for the Future of Innovation in Society. Topics were also very diverse, ranging from archaeology, making archaeology more accessible to the public, to creating an innovative engine for teachers, to using memes for sustainability, and creating a global market pop-up store where refugees are able to participate in the job market. After tallying reviewers' ratings, we invited each finalist to submit a 3-minute video highlighting the problem that they were trying to solve, the importance of their work, and a brief discussion about the impact of their work. KM products ranged from podcasts to social media campaigns to innovative power sources. In addition to honoring all KM finalists this afternoon, I would also like to take a moment to thank all of the students and postdoctoral scholars who took the time to submit those applications, because again, this time of year especially, we know how much work that involved. Even if not selected, going through that application process can help you to be more expert knowledge mobilizers. Can definitely help you to be able to communicate with diverse audiences effectively and understand the main facets of knowledge mobilization. In addition, events such as these provide the platform for you to have these knowledge mobilization discussions and perhaps expand your audiences that you're working with. Perhaps also allow you to formulate more interdisciplinary connections that can help to further your knowledge. We are now pleased to share with you the videos of our KM finalists in 3 categories. The 3 categories, again, were the master's level, the doctoral level, and finally the postdoctoral level.
I present to you the Global Market, a mobile public entrepreneurship project. Today, many communities face endless oppression. Mobilization of empowerment, self-sufficiency, and support is needed as much as mobilizing technology. The Global Market Project is designed to do so. It was developed by social work graduates from the Office of Global Social Work at Arizona State University, and it was created to address a local community need by putting emphasis on the talents and skills that the refugee community can bring to the market in Arizona, making it an impactful and usable project that can be recreated locally, nationally, and globally. While the focus on helping through ethnic-based community organizations in the Valley, I can now say that nonprofits are empowered more than ever to to enter the retail world by creating an alliance and making use of empty retail spaces nationwide. By using Alliance as a project strategy and merging the pop-up store as a concept from the world of business, an environment was created where refugees were capable of practicing their English communication skills, learn how to create, manage, and sell their own handmade merchandise, and learn how to grow. The environment of public entrepreneurship that evolved between the city of Phoenix as a government sector, the Red Development as a for-profit sector, the ethnic-based community organizations as a nonprofit sector, and the Office of Global Social Work as an educational entity, we proved that self-sufficiency can be learned and led by people from the community. A little over 20 refugee women and 3 ethnic-based community organizations were able to generate almost $20,000 of sale revenues in just 1 month. The project was designed to impact personal development.
My proposed framework shares the processes from Lean UX and Scrum and also adds a 3-way clustering measurement system to categorize product performance. So as you can see, this is my complete picture of my framework that I've created, and if you go through the different steps of my framework, you'll ultimately come to the measurement section where it measures the performance of a software feature into 3 categories. And this framework ultimately pushes each and every feature to the good growth state. That means if a feature is not performing well, it has to be either iterated or dropped, but it has to come to the green circle stage so that the product can actually mature and become successful and scale. So I ran an experiment where I created a website with different products and different pricing to test my framework and in order to improve that website and its products. So what I've seen is that 100% of the paid customers are female, and that 2 of the products are successful, where the 3rd product is not as marketable or is not as demanded. So this instead will be used for my next marketing strategy or when I'm to improve my product for in the future release. So how am I mobilizing all my knowledge and research? I'm using LinkedIn and YouTube to create videos and articles to share with the world. I'm also training through my website where the content is based on everything that I have put into this research, everything related to software development and product management. I'm also providing free mentoring service to people who need help who sign up through my website. These are some of the statistics I have so far. For example, on YouTube, I have more than 10,000 views on a video that I shared related to this area of my knowledge.
For the participants, I chose the students from Scottsdale Community College and also from the Tudor Math class. This is the video I provide to the students, and the student supposed to follow the guidelines after I gave them all the information, what they're supposed to do, how they do, and which means significant, and the students reduce math anxiety after they get a treatment.
And the winner is Aliyah Ahmadid. Great, outstanding job. And now we are going to move on to the next category, which is the doctoral category. There were actually 4 finalists in this one because there was a tie.
Some people say laughter is the best medicine. Well, let's prove them right. Hi, I'm Vanya. I have been a sustainability practitioner for a while now, and while I dream of somehow influencing the lives of people I've never met, the biggest challenge for me is to persuade my own friends to follow some sustainable practices in their lives. Most of my friends are college students, and I understand that college life can be very stressful. Between tons of exams, assignments, and project deadlines, one may easily forget to do simple things like switching off lights before leaving a room, turning off the tap while leaving the bathroom, or carrying our own water bottle to school. As a result, we buy a plastic bottle whenever we are thirsty or pick one up at one of those school free food events on campus, without realizing that every time we do so, we are adding tons of plastic waste to the environment, which pollutes the environment, accumulates in the oceans, and kills our friends in water. Nemo! But what if there was a way to change this? What if I could tell my friends to stop using plastic bottles?
Stop! Say no to plastic. You people need to listen.
Well, without losing them. And that's when I came up with the idea of internet memes. These days, people spend so much time in the internet. Social media websites like Facebook and Twitter have become the major source of our daily news and information. And this means that people need some short, simple, and engaging content every day. Besides, research shows that things that make people laugh stay with them longer and motivate them to change their behavior. So, I started making memes, picking up some of my favorite movie dialogues and twisting them a bit so that it conveys my message of asking people to stop buying plastic bottles and carry their own water bottles instead. And guess what? It worked!
Yay!
In a survey conducted with a focus group at ASU, it was found that more than 60% of the students found the memes funny and would share them with their friends on social media. And 75% felt that the memes encouraged them to start carrying their own water bottles or stop using plastic bottles.
Researching how to make cities more resilient to extreme weather, I'm looking into how the federal government maps and communicates flood risk in coastal communities, and the knowledge power dynamics that shape this process. So what, you might be wondering, why should someone like me care about this? Do you own a home or think that you'd be in the market for one in the future? If yes, then you should. FEMA flood maps are used in setting insurance premiums for homeowners. Changes to these maps can result in higher insurance premiums and a significant reduction in property values if a property gets placed in a flood zone. This is such an important societal issue that I was determined to raise awareness of how the politics of producing flood maps impacts the resilience of our nation's cities to extreme floods. I and several other grad students and postdocs at ASU created a podcast called the Future Cities Podcast to share our individual research interests with the public. I decided that my first ever podcast episode would be about these flood mapping issues. This episode is called Climate Risk and Resilience: Lessons from the 2017 Hurricane Season. This episode is one of our podcast's most popular, but it only reached an academic audience due to being too technical. I need to create more relatable and accessible content for a general audience. I realized that I needed the voices of non-scientists. I then had the bright idea to actually invite poets onto the next episode. My April 2018 Poems for Resilient and Equitable Cities episode features several renowned local Phoenix poets as they each share an original piece of poetry that they wrote to create spaces for listeners to rethink what it means to build a resilient and equitable city. You'll have to grab a tissue if you want to listen to this one. If there was ever such a thing as a transformative poem, these poems are it. This collaboration as a scientist and artist produced our most popular podcast episode to date. Our Future Cities podcast has well over 1,000 listens since first airing in September 2017. We track the impact we're having across all the platforms that we share the podcast, including iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. I think that art plays a very critical role in mobilizing scientific knowledge into action. This podcasting experience convinced me that we need more collaboration with artists and scientists to mobilize scientific knowledge. Albert Einstein famously said that the greatest scientists are artists as well.
I'm going to tell you about a project where I use my knowledge and skills to mobilize the research of other archaeologists and increase their impact. The Archaeology Show is a podcast I co-host on the Archaeology Podcast Network. The name of the show is simple, but the mission behind it is not. In my career, I focused on ways of communicating academic research with the public. I like to think of myself as a translator and guide. The Archaeology Show uses the popular format, the podcast, to address two needs. One, if you're interested in archaeology, how do you learn about it? And two, if you're an archaeologist, how do you share your work? Popular imagery of archaeology is dominated by Lara Croft or Indiana Jones, and a shocking number of people think archaeologists study dinosaurs. The Archaeology Show works to create an informed public and break down the image of Indiana Jones. Not everyone has the time, skill, or interest in developing a platform to share their research, but this doesn't mean their work does not deserve to be shared. The Archaeology Show is that platform. I use my skills to hunt down the researcher behind that story in your Facebook feed and help them communicate the details about what their work means archaeologically and how it connects to the world today. Remember that person researching prehistoric settlements? She's actually part of a team studying how communities respond to climate change. This always leads to the question of who is the show for? I think it's more of a question of who is the show not for. Episodes are accessible to the general public with archaeological terms and ideas explained, but the topics are engaging enough that archaeologists want to tune in. Currently, there are 39 episodes available through your podcast app or via our webpage. We have around 4,000 subscribers, and that number grows weekly.
Knowledge mobilization project is understanding clean energy materials with atomic resolution microscopes. Through this project, I hope to advance scientific literacy, promote interest in STEM, and advocate for public investment in science. So first, a brief background to my research. In my research, I use atomic resolution electron microscopes to study the atomic features of clean energy materials. And this work is motivated by my interest in sustainability and can lead to the engineering of highly efficient clean energy technologies. I also think it's amazing that we can image atoms and materials, and I find that the atomic resolution images generated in my research, such as the one shown here, are an ideal platform for inspiring excitement about science and for communicating scientific concepts. To engage broader audiences, however, I realized I would need to utilize alternative platforms. So I created an image-based social media account, which has been an ideal way for me to explain scientific concepts related to images relevant to my research. I've also, beyond this platform, I've also reached out to kids and high schoolers through programs facilitated by my department where we build 3D models of materials related to my research. This one, for example, demonstrates the periodic nature of crystalline lattices. And I think the impact of this approach is that the public and these students gain enhanced understanding of scientific concepts, but they also see how publicly funded scientific research can be used to solve problems, real-world problems related to their life.
And here we go. The winner is Vanya Bisht. Congratulations. Great job. That was the first time I had heard of a Powtoon before. And it was an excellent job. And I'm excited. She's going to actually be doing more work this fall, right, to measure the impact. So if you get a chance to chat with her more, I'm sure she'd like to share. Great. And then the last category here is the postdoctoral. First finalist is Joseph DeWiron.
Peer review. Peer review is a foundational process in the academic enterprise. A researcher makes a discovery or posits an idea. She conducts an investigation, writes up her findings, submits this written text to an academic journal. Her peers in her field scrutinize her hypotheses, the methods, the findings. If it passes this scrutiny, the paper is published and it enters the body of knowledge, ultimately putting these findings up as an artifact for further scrutiny. However, although this process has served humanity extremely well, this peer review and publication process privileges certain types of knowledge above others, and it privileges certain types of media above others. So what this means is that certain fields, in particular certain fields of practice, are sort of left out of having access to this great innovation engine. One of those fields of practice is teaching. I've been testing out a concept that applies this peer review process to videos of instructional practice. I just wrapped up a pilot where I asked professors at Arizona State University to think about some instructional method or practice that they're really good at. I asked them to record it, and then I asked them to write a brief write-up that states what's in the lesson, what's the material, what's the context of the lesson in terms of student body, student makeup. And then I asked them to submit it, write-up and video, for peer review. The reviewers scrutinized both the video and the paper, and then they made a determination to either accept, to reject, or to ask for revisions. This project was conceived as a knowledge mobilization project from the very beginning. The initial goal was to discover, to test, to experiment, and then ultimately to scale a method that could mobilize the knowledge of those 84.4 million teachers and professors that are around the globe. That's 84.4 million people who are in the practice of teaching that are not documenting their best practices, that are not submitting these best practices up to the rigor of peer review, and then having a vehicle to go ahead and disseminate this information more widely. I want to evangelize this concept. So with that said, by the end of 2019, I'd like to have 100 peer-reviewed video journals of teacher instruction created around the globe.
Work on the ecology of seed harvesting ants found in South Mountain Regional Park. During my time as a postdoc, my publications have described the annual number and weight of ants produced per hectare in the Sonoran Desert. I've also demonstrated how ant body size is influenced by genetic diversity in colonies, and asked how differences in body size affect the complexity of subterranean ant nest architecture. This work has been published in scientific journals, but I also wanted to make it directly accessible to the wider ASU and Tempe Phoenix community. So in 2017, I communicated my scientific research via a widely disseminated educational video. The impacts of this educational video are threefold. As an ASU-funded postdoctoral researcher, my demonstration allows citizens to access the results of research that they funded without the barriers of expensive scientific journal membership. The video also highlights how scientists approach unknowns methodologically and provides a visual representation of what a scientist and a career in field biology might look like. Finally, the video encourages scientific literacy by using scientific nomenclature and highlighting the incredible natural history of organisms present right here in the city limits of Phoenix and Tempe. This is important because it emphasizes to children and students that there are still scientific mysteries underfoot, waiting to be solved, even in an urban setting.
Hi, I want to change how you get to work by bringing more power to the Valley of the Sun. Recently in the Angel Lab, we got a couple innovative patents that we want to get licensed by companies right here in the Valley, nationally, or even worldwide. Batteries are used for energy storage, similar to your laptop or maybe your smartphone that you're talking on or scrolling through right now wishing you had more power. And fuel cells, which is very similar to a battery as it's an electrochemical device that's used for energy generation, used for residences, businesses, or even unmanned aerial vehicles like drones. 3 reasons what makes our patents better for a company like you. One, we're making them safer. So we've gotten rid of all the flammable components that you've seen with explosions or fiery situations with competitors. 2, higher performance. The chemicals themselves, we've been able to get around 9% better efficiency. But if you go above that, you get more thermodynamically favorable values where we've been able to get up to 25% better efficiency. So what makes batteries and fuel cells, again, electrochemical devices, more favorable than the internal combustion engine, make it much more efficient, almost twice more efficient to give it better energy. Not only more performance, but better energy density. So we want to go from the ice age into a green, sustainable age. And I had the opportunity with a small electric bike company to introduce the community to electric transportation. Locally, we've been able to impact kids, teaching them about fuel cell and battery powered cars with the Urban League Young Professionals, more recently at the Microsoft Center in downtown Tempe. Now we plan on reaching different audiences on platforms such as with the Arizona Green Chamber of Commerce and the Arizona Commerce, and having them being educated with what's happening in electric transportation, empowering them by giving them different metrics such as certification and how to use the electrochemical devices, but then importantly, environmentally friendliness to where we're reducing CO2 emissions here in the air in the Valley of the Sun.
All right. And the winner is Dr. T. Gregory Tucker. Okay, now, as we come to a close of our program here, just a couple of announcements, or reminders, if you will. I hope that, first of all, please join me in giving one more round of applause to our finalists, our awardees, and all of the attendees that took time out today to be with us. Thank you. Also, please complete your feedback surveys, and if you would like to be eligible for the drawing, please do include your email so that we can track you down for the wonderful prize. At this time, we would like to invite you to congratulate our finalists and awardees, enjoy refreshments, continue conversations, and browse the tables from our students and postdoctoral scholars of the KM Studio course. Congratulations again to our awardees and finalists, as well as family, friends, and faculty here to support them. Knowledge mobilization truly is an interdisciplinary effort, and it's all of your hard work and dedication that make this possible. Thank you.